and for free.
The government say it's unacceptable and no belief system can justify the abuse of a child. But campaigners insist more needs to be done to tackle the problem before it becomes more widespread.
Noel Phillips reporting. If you want to share that film, do go to our programme page, bbc.co.uk/Victoria. Let's talk now to Cavani Kanda. Cavani was branded a witch and abused as a child. Also here, Yasmin Raymond, formerly a Metropolitan Police officer and now human rights activist, and Oladapo Awosokanre from the charity Africans United Against Child Abuse, and that supports victims of witchcraft accusations. Welcome all of you. Thank you very much for coming on the programme.
Thank you very much.
Cavani, tell me what happened to you as a 6-year-old.
I was accused of being a witch, and this just literally stemmed from me specifically just wetting my bed. So yeah, I was branded as a witch, and so due to that there was a lot of child abuse involved in that. I think the difference between me and some of the other cases that we've heard recently is at that time there wasn't much around deliverances. It was more of branding children and accusing them of witchcraft, whereas now there's been a big shift where you've got more churches involved now that are apparently delivering these children from evil possession.
You say apparently delivering these children from evil possession. You think it's a sham?
It is. It's a sham. I mean, I'm a Christian. I go to church. I have 2 children, a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. And I don't have an issue with people's belief. My issue is, according to the Bible, there is nowhere in the Bible where it says in order to deliver somebody of spiritual possession, you have to put pepper or ginger or horrific substances in their eyes or in certain other areas that, you know, you couldn't imagine. What happened to just laying your hands on somebody and praying for them? When did it become somebody's job to decide that only children are witches? I mean, when I was younger, from what I remember, it was the older generation. When you was old and you was frail and you had grey hair, you were seen as a witch. Whereas now, it's shifted from the older generation to specifically children who cannot defend themselves.
Yeah. You mentioned pepper being rubbed into eyes and other parts of your body. Is that something that happened to you?
It is something that happened to me. And it's horrific, it's horrendous, and it shouldn't be allowed. Accusing any child of being a witch is nonsense. And attempting to deliver them through usage of whether it's pepper, whether it's beating, whether it's starvation, on all levels is basic child abuse.
Was food withdrawn from you as well?
Yes, it was. It was withdrawn. I remember at a point all I could take was 2 slices of bread, and they would mark it where the last slice was taken. And so in the night time, if I felt hungry and went and got another one, I would be beaten in the morning because they would know that I took that extra slice of bread. And actions like that, once again, was you're a witch. But actually, I was just a child who was starving, hungry, and was deprived of basic food. And I think a lot needs to be done to stop all what is going on. I mean, I know that the Metropolitan Police have got Project Violet. Things are moving more than what they were when, you know, when I was branded a witch. I had an incident where police was called and I was sent right back home. When I tried to explain to the officers what was happening, I think they couldn't accept that anybody could do such thing to a child. So therefore, I was handed right back to the people who claimed to be, you know, biologically related to me, and they wasn't.
Right.
So
let me bring in Yasmin Raymond then, because you're a former Metropolitan officer. You worked for Project Violet that Cavani mentioned. In terms of the police, there wouldn't be any cultural sensitivities, would there, about getting involved when a child is clearly being abused or neglected?
I wasn't a police officer, I was a member of civil staff and I was engaged with Project Violet, but it's a child protection issue.
Yeah.
I mean, clearly in Cavani's case and in the cases that have come to the attention of Africa, we're talking about children, but there are also adults who also get involved, but in different contexts as victims too. I think the criminal justice system can only go so far. This has to be a multifaceted response. It's got to involve service providers from a range of backgrounds. We've had guidance through the Department of Education. There's been guidance and training for police officers. But I think we've also got to accept that services are challenged. We've got constantly changing demographics. We've also got new issues constantly coming to the fore, and police officers, social workers, teachers, etc. have got to be ahead of the curve in order to
Well,
try and...
let me bring in Oladapo then, because your charity trains and works with social workers, teachers, other professionals. What practical skills, do they need any other practical skills apart from the ones they will already have in order to spot children who are being accused of being a witch by their wider family and abused subsequently?
Yes, from the standpoint of Afruka, there's need for them to have specialist training. That is why Afruka, we have a special training we give to practitioners.
And what does that involve?
Witchcraft and juju training, and also training for practitioners in terms of understanding African families and how to intervene and when to intervene.
Yeah.
And
isn't it obvious when to intervene? I mean, if a child is being starved or abused in the way that Kavani explained, that's pretty obvious, isn't it?
Yeah, there are telltale signs. However, oftentimes it's being seen within the narrow confine of the normal categories of abuse, which will be emotional, which is the obvious one, or physical abuse.
Right.
However, there's need for them to understand the cultural aspect of this, and also what witchcraft means and how it's done, for them to be able to investigate further, to know what exactly is the issue with the child, just not leaving it at the level of either it's physical abuse or emotional abuse.
Right, do you agree with that? That professionals need to be trained in what witchcraft is, or what people believe it to be?
I think at the moment we have lack of understanding where it stems from, and I think you hit it on the nail that within certain departments, there's still that fear of, we don't want it to come across as if we are specifically picking on certain communities or certain religious beliefs. And it shouldn't be like that. If a child is being abused, regardless of their colour or their gender, the first thing is, it's a child protection issue, and it's about safeguarding that child regardless of the culture that they come from.
But that's why I'm asking specifically, why do professionals need training about witchcraft? Just because it will help them, you think, identify children at risk?
Yes.
Yeah, OK, fine.
Because the general training practitioners have just gives them like a general overview, but they need to understand the specific, how fate abuse is perpetrated and how victims could be identified easily.
I want to ask all of you, female genital mutilation, it is now against the law, specifically. There is a specific law which criminalises it. Would it be wise to do the same with witchcraft?
Yes.
Yes.
Why?
Africa has been advocating for this for a number of years now, and the advocacy of Africa led to the government setting up the National Working Group on faith, on abuse relating to faith and belief, which also had an action plan in order to see this. However, there's need, as you've said, because is his own specific category in itself, and we shouldn't just put it within the normal abuse category.
You agree with that? You would like to see legislation, would you?
I definitely would like to see legislation. I think the difference is people forget child abuse. There's different forms of abuse, and accusing a child of witchcraft is a different type of abuse.
OK, so it's not... OK, so actually
it is
the
very
act
much
of accusing a child... Forget the abuse, which there is legislation which prohibits that, obviously, which is a criminal offence. But accusing a child of witchcraft should be a criminal offence.
Yes.
It should be, because think about it. Having a child, if you was a child and every day I told you that you was a witch, that's psychological abuse.
Right.
And unfortunately, at the moment, there's not enough being done to help survivors. So one of the things that I've been campaigning, and I'm starting in the process of doing, is a project called Branded a Witch, whereby we can help support survivors in and out of care, because we speak about training frontline staff, but no one really speaks about the survivors, what support is put in place to support them, and what justice they can get. Because at the moment, there's very, very little cases where people have been brought to justice for abusing children or even pastors. So something has to be done.
Yes, I want to ask you about pastors and faith leaders in a second, but Yasmin, I think you were hesitant when I said, should there be legislation criminalising witchcraft or accusing somebody of being a witch? Why?
I think that in the past few years we've seen a rush to legislate for everything, and there may well be a place for some legislation, but I think labelling children as a witch is one manifestation of spirit possession. You have jinn, you have black magic, you've got the evil eye. Noel Phillips' film, which I think is incredible, is again one manifestation where you've got community members who are actually witnessing things. You've also got an awful lot happening behind closed doors. There's been a lot of work done on this. The Stobart report going back to 2006.
But sorry, why don't you think it should be
Well, because there was a whole load of recommendations in that report, including having a helpline, doing more research, working with survivors to hear what it is that survivors think that would help. And in all my work with survivors, I've not yet heard anyone say legislation would help. What
apart
they
from
say,
this young
apart
woman
from Kavani.
Yeah.
But I'm talking, my work is predominantly with South Asians and people of Middle Eastern origin and North African origin. What they're saying to me is actually better understanding of some of the issues, so that when they come forward and say, I'm being told I'm possessed, or I'm being told that someone's cast an evil eye on me, and this is why I have this illness, or this is why I'm behaving in this way, that there is an understanding of what that is, and you're not told that it's ridiculous and to go away.
Yeah.
I think that's
But if
really
there was
crucial.
legislation,
We've
then
had
everybody would
legislation for
understand.
FGM for an awful long time.
Yeah.
We're still awaiting a conviction. I also think the criminal justice outcome, arresting those pastors, isn't the end of it. There's still ongoing support for survivors and their families. And then there's changing behaviours in communities, and I think we have to, as Kavani's already said, actually get into those communities and work with them.
And which kind of communities are we talking about broadly?
I think we're talking about all communities.
Well, we're not talking about all communities, are we?
We have particular manifestations. There's the African community, I think there's definitely the Muslim community and the 1.6 billion Muslims in the world, Hindu communities, Sikh communities. But the Church of England has exorcists in every diocese. It's still, I mean, it's not manifested in the same way as it is here, thankfully. But I think looking at the roles that religion play in terms of working directly with vulnerable people, and where that can spill over into exploitation and to serious criminal offences, whether it's exploiting people for money or whether it's culminating in murder, which it so sadly does.
I still think that we should put a legislation out, simply because there has to be an example. At the moment, it's so widely done. You can, walk down certain streets and go to certain churches and you can hear the pastor preaching about, a child or somebody is a witch, that's why your life is not going correct. Until they realise that we're actually serious about this, it's not going to stop. Anybody can go and open up a church. There's nothing that protects the children who attend those churches to make sure that regardless of what you're preaching, there's no deliverances happening that is abusive to these children. And as I've said, I do believe we should start legislations, and I think more projects need to be put out there, such as Branded a Witch, to ensure that survivors are supported, communities are supported, and teachers, social workers, lawyers, immigration, frontline staff need to have a better understanding, because they are the people who work with these children on a regular. I think one of the biggest upset for me is there were so many opportunities for people to save me, but because there was lack of understanding and lack of knowledge, I slipped through the net, and that is what is happening on a day-to-day basis. We have got no idea. The fact that people got away with what they got away with, and the fact that the school wasn't really sure on how to go about it, and at that time children themselves had very little voice than what they have now. So I do believe that everybody, from doctors to schools, teachers and children, should be taught at school that actually branding children or branding anybody in a negative way is absolutely wrong.
A final thought. I mentioned that the Metropolitan Police last year had dealt with 60 cases, 60 cases. It's a very small number of cases when you compare it to other things, but the number of cases has gone up from 2013, 2014. I'm just trying to get a sense of how much of a problem it is in Britain.
It's a huge problem.
Yeah, is it huge? Is it huge?
It's a huge problem. It's just that it's undercover.
Yeah. Right.
We haven't even scratched the surface of the issue when it comes to
it's
branding.
considerable. It has a considerable number and is growing, and that's why at Afruka, apart from the issue of legislation, we also believe there's need to work with communities and work with faith leaders, and that's what we've been doing over the years. We've been able to go into the community, train a lot of faith leaders, train 5,000 parents and African families, and also train 1,000 practitioners for them to be able to understand what this type of abuse is linked with faith and belief, and for them to know what to do and how to report, and also how to help victims of such abuse. Yeah.
Okay. It's not undercover either, Victoria. It's, if you pick up a copy of the Metro, which is free on as you're travelling into work, there are classifieds for various sheikhs, for various faith healers, who in return for money will help you find work, will solve your marriage problems. We have TV channels which beam into people's homes, whether they're African Christian TV channels, evangelical channels from America, or channels from South Asian channels. which are basically saying to people, you call in, we will give you either a talisman, or we will for a fee, we will do this, we will do that. We will tell you how to get rid of the demons in your house that are leading to your difficulties.
Right. Thank you, very interesting. Thank you very much, and thanks for talking so openly as well. A couple of messages from viewers around the country. Maureen tweets this, these poor children, it's just awful abuse. Social services have to watch out for this. This email from Sarah says, your piece on witchcraft just shows how belief can influence and affect lives. These children need support and resources. LJ says, it's a great review, a great piece on witchcraft on your programme. Thank you for bringing these issues to the fore. And Lynn, this utterly hideous practice of accusing children of being witches has got to stop. Police should have a no-tolerance policy. Thank you very much. A government spokesman said nothing is more important than keeping children safe. No belief system can justify the abuse of a child. It is unacceptable in any form. Those responsible for child abuse linked to faith or belief would be prosecuted under the same legislation as anyone abusing or killing a child for other reasons. Our statutory guidance is crystal clear. Anyone who has concerns about a child's welfare should report this to Children's Social Care or the police. Also a statement through from the Met Police. They say abuse linked to belief is a horrific crime which is condemned by people of all cultures, communities and faith. Families or carers genuinely believe that the victim has been completely taken over by the devil or an evil spirit, which is often supported by someone who within the community has portrayed themselves as an authority on faith and belief. Regardless of the beliefs of the abusers, child abuse